So Indian students, while they are in their class 12th here at home, everything's they're like fed. Their mom cooks their food, they have a lot of support around the academics, and suddenly the student comes to the university. He has to study what he has to study. To top up, there is also this concept of part-time jobs. How do you think can a student balance between all this, still be able to have a successful career? A lot of my friends who are up there in the HR positions of various companies, they are always like, God, it's so difficult to find talent. Our students who are in the best of the universities, they always come back and say it's so difficult to get into a company.
I think this is the exact problem.
Students are allowed to work part-time. Students will work during the co-op. Are limitations on the students when they are doing co-op or the part-time job?
Within the Australian visa, co-op placement is integrated in their academic studies. It's outside of their visa restrictions. So students can work part-time as part of their studies and then have an additional co-op placement which is fully paid as well. So it's added value. You are adding whatever you're learning and you're putting that into practice immediately. And so what we're hearing from industry, that's exactly what they needed. They said, we don't have enough young talent. We don't retain the talent. The talent that we have is not skilled enough. And then we asked the students, what is it that they want? And what they want is just the opportunity. They want to be able to apply what they have learned.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show, Spin the Career Wheel with Nikkhiel Malhottra. Today we have Barbara Jones, Executive Director Global at Federation University, Australia. Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for coming here and taking time out for this discussion.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikkhiel. It's beautiful to be here.
A pleasure is ours. So Barbara, I think today's discussion is going to be around the importance of employability, work-integrated learning. Before we move on to that, I think primarily I was going through your profile, what we discussed. So you were born in Austria, Vienna, and you studied in UK as an international student. So can you throw some light around your journey?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was born in Austria, but my kind of academic career started quite late. I was a mature student. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then ended up studying sociology at the university in Salzburg. That was heavily theoretical. And after 2 years, I decided I moved to the UK and I wanted to finish my studies there. I was an international student. And what I loved about my undergraduate degree at that point was the care the university took for the student. So it was really about helping the student, talking about employability, to have a career outcome. I really enjoyed that. And then I stuck in the UK. So I did my postgraduate there. And I continued to be an international student for a while.
No, I understand. And now I also look at, you have spent a lot of time working in some of the leading global European, UK, Austria universities. So your experience at one of the universities wherein you have done a lot of work around the sandwich year, which is primarily around employability, and now with your current role wherein it's all about employability, which you're talking these days. So what is your perspective on the importance of work-integrated learning during a university degree?
Well, Nikkhiel, I think work-integrated learning is a really hugely part of what we as university staff or universities should do. Of course, not everybody wants to come out with a career in, engineering and wants to have a job, and absolutely acknowledge that. We do need the researchers and we do need doctorates, etc. as well. But not every student wants that. And so I think being able as a university to train students and graduates to become employable at the end of it is a huge part of our role. I think I always see it. We don't just teach students. We actually create the employers or the employees of the future. And having that as part of the journey, we're just an intermediate. We just connect the student with the employer in the intermediate.
And yeah, I think that's very relevant. If I look at from an Indian perspective, so I have studied in India. I remember when I was picking up universities, we were always focused on the campus placements that university or that college had last year. So there's a lot of emphasis which Indian students, Indian parents give to the full-time placements once the degree is over. And hence, somehow for us, when our students want to pick up international universities, employability becomes important. And we have a challenge here. So when we look at international university websites, we come across terms like internships, work-integrated learning, the co-op programs. But what exactly is, how different are they? Like, what is the difference between these three?
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about the co-op program in a minute, but just to emphasize the importance that universities are looking at, how do we solve the problem that we are facing currently, right? Global skill shortage. So universities, I see universities, the importance of being the connector, as I said earlier, between the student and the employer. And how do we connect that through a 3 or 4 year program? Now, universities do that through work-integrated learning as part of that, or through internships. What I have found through my career, it's very often as an optional. So students can choose to do it or not. Very often it's down to the student to make it happen, which also creates a challenge, an additional hurdle for international students, because they don't feel as confident, or they may not have the networks available to make inroads into that. And everybody who knows a little bit about how the Australian society works, the network is everything. And so for me, that's why what we do in terms of the co-op model is such an important part, because we enable students to learn that as part of that. Students, when they are in their placement, they're not a student, they're an employee. The co-op model is for credit. So it doesn't add on to the length of study. So you spoke briefly about the sandwich program, which I was a massive fan of in the UK. I think hugely successful. But what happened was, and that hence it's called sandwich, it added an additional year. So between the second and the third year, they added a year in, and so it made it a 4-year degree. Now, many students don't want that.
Correct.
The way we have designed the course is it is for credit. So the unit that they do, the placement unit is part of that. They are being assessed based on that. There's feedback from the employer and from the academics, and it is paid. So it doesn't just give the student the opportunity to be embedded within a work placement, but it also gives them the dignity to not be free labor, but actually be contribute effectively to the workforce.
I can understand. This is what you're doing, which is great. But again, from a general perspective, I've seen terms like mandatory internships. Right now, when I look at that, a lot of parents come to me and they say, "Oh, this is compulsory," and they go by the thought that, okay, I'll go and do an internship at the university. But my question is, what if they don't get an internship? What happens then?
Yeah,
what really happens to that student?
I love the question, Nikkhiel, because you're absolutely right. So when we say mandatory internships or compulsory or whatever it is, it becomes extremely tricky for international students, as I said earlier, when they don't have the networks or when they don't have the confidence. So what we do at Federation University as part of that co-op model, our students in the first year all have to do a professional identity unit. Which is a unit that helps them to build their CV, learn how to behave in an office environment, how to be effective, how to be, what is work behaviors, things to say, not to say, how to rock up for an interview. Those are the sort of soft skills that are really, really important. We have found that employers really value that. The way we work with our employers, with our industry partners, is we get feedback from them on a particular student who's like, maybe you want to add that into the professional unit as well. And so we have that as a compulsory unit in the first year. Now, from the second year onwards, students then choose a placement. But as part of that placement, we take that very seriously. To your point earlier, as a university staff, we have a placement coordinator and a team that helps the students find the placement. So it's down to the student to choose where they want to go, but it's the placement coordinator that works with the student to make sure that the placement happens, that they're prepared for the interview, that they have the right questions addressed, etc. And sometimes, because it is a competitive process, which, by the way, I also think it is an important part of that. We don't simulate reality. We bring reality into the classroom. We work with the students. When the interview wasn't successful, it is an important part for us to make sure that we prepare the students for the next approach. Maybe we need to polish their CV. Maybe we need to polish their presentation style, etc. So that is all part of that. We don't just leave the students to do their own work. We actually are supporting them throughout that process.
So frankly, when I'm listening to you, to me, this seems a lot of work for an international student. And I tell you how international Indian students, I'm talking primarily for Indian students here. So Indian students, while they are in their class 12th here at home, they're like fed. Their mom cooks their food. They have a lot of support around the academics. And suddenly the student comes to the university. He has to study what he has to study. Then you are talking about co-op or what we have to do. To top up, there is also this concept of part-time jobs. Now, how do you think can a student balance between all this and still be able to have a successful career? How?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. It is a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, but the way we have structured it is that it is flexible to the student. So
Okay.
the co-op model, the co-op placement doesn't need to be a full-time placement. It is
Okay.
really down to the student to negotiate that with the employer.
Great.
Which makes complete sense. We are also reducing the academic workload during that placement for the student. So they can really focus on placement because it is for credit and we're looking at the academic learning outcome as part of that placement. So we are seeing that as an integral part of their learning experience.
Great. So what I understand, correct me. So what I understand that a co-op degree is primarily when a student gets into the workforce, he has to study less academic compared to a without co-op degree. Is that something like that?
I wouldn't call it that.
Okay,
I would
yeah.
call it an applied learning approach.
Okay. Okay.
You are adding whatever you're learning and you're putting that into practice immediately. And so what we're hearing from industry is that that's exactly what they needed. So when we soft launched the co-op model last year, it was overwhelmingly positive, both from the student perspective, but also from the employer's perspective on what actually happened in the workplace. The industry partners, our employers, they said they wouldn't have been able to achieve what they did without the students. They found it's added so much value to their teams because the student came and contributed effectively. So while it is maybe less academic in that sense, it is immediate application of it and reinforces the academic learning. So you really literally walk out of the placement with the confidence. And when we look at the academics and the academic feedback that we've received was the academics exactly said they felt like, oh my goodness, the student was a completely different person. They were motivated, they were confident, they knew what they wanted. And I think that's exactly what we needed. That's exactly what universities should provide for students when we offer placements.
Yes, and I buy your point, when you mentioned about the dignity of a student, that during your education, the university helps you into a co-op work learning environment and you are paid for that. Now so while this is very good, that also comes, another question comes to my mind is, students are allowed to work part-time and now students will work during the co-op. Are they allowed? Are these two different, or are there any work limitations on the students when they are doing co-op or the part-time jobs?
So the way within the Australian visa or student system, because the co-op placement is integrated in their academic studies, it sits outside of their visa restrictions.
Okay.
So students can work part-time. Part-time as part of their studies, and then have an additional co-op placement which is fully paid as well. So it's added value. It's win-win on all sides. And by the way, if students have a part-time job that is, for example, relating to their academic studies, very often and that's where the problem is, right? They find a part-time job, but it actually doesn't allow them to add that into their academic learning outcomes. But when that happens, they can add that into their placements. They can use it as a placement, a co-op part of it, as long as it meets the academic learning outcomes. So again, it is important that we see this not as an less academic and more workplace. It is an integrated way and an applied way of using learning, theoretical learning in the workplace.
I think this is a very good model. Another observation. So there's a lot of questions which we get from parents. What kind of part-time jobs my student will do? And we say these will primarily not be into what they are going to study. These will be the jobs in some supermarkets, in some some marketing agencies, which has nothing to do with what they are studying. But I think if a student is already into the co-op, say in second year, he has gone for a 3-year or a 4-year education, he is into co-op, and probability is also that the remaining of his part-time jobs, he can continue with the same employer he's doing the co-op.
Fantastic. That's exactly right. So we have had students that were offered a full-time job straight after their placement as soon as they finished their course. That's exactly the beauty of this model. And just to also just give you a bit of background around what the actual problem statement is, right? Because what happens is that we have got an industry need for young, talented, skilled workers. But international students haven't been able to be connected through that, through a very systematic approach in order to do that. So we believe that by doing that, we're meeting industry needs, right? Global skill shortage with what the students want. They want to be in that setting.
No, I agree. And I think which is fair enough. An international student, the entire family is back in India. They have their networks and connections here. This student goes to a university. He needs that support to go to the industry. And I think this what we are talking about, the internships or the co-op, is really an important part of a student's university education. Which should be there. Another thing, Barbara, so I have a lot of my friends who are up there in the HR positions of various companies. Whenever we meet, and they are always like, God, it's so difficult to find talent. We have to hire agencies to get us the best talent. And when I look at our students who are in the best of the universities, they always come back and say, it's so difficult to get into a company. It's very difficult. We don't know what to do. So what is your perspective again on this? Like what as a university you guys are doing, or what others should do here? Yeah.
I think this is exactly the exact problem. And that's exactly what we've found. So we've done extensive research with industry partners like IBM, EY, McCain, the government of Victoria, etc. Over a period of about a couple of months, we invited 70 of our...
70?
70.
Oh, that's a big number.
Big number. Yeah. But the industry, they came together and we asked all these questions. What is it that you're looking for? And we're like, yeah, but we have got all these students. What are we going to do? So, and what they told us exactly that. So they said, we don't have enough young talent. We don't retain the talent. The talent that we have is not skilled enough. They're not ready when they come, right? They all, I mean, IBM, a big company, right? They do recruit students or graduates, but they're not ready. They're not, it takes them about, 6 months to upskill them and to make them ready for the workforce. And so that for them to contribute. And so all of these bits and pieces, exactly, right? And then we ask the students, what is it that they want? And what they want is just the opportunity. They want to be able to apply what they have learned. And so that's exactly how this co-op model came about, in making sure that we listen to industry. And I think that's an important part universities are doing, in listening to industry and incorporating that in their course design. Now, what we have done additionally to that, we have co-created product, i.e. courses. We've co-created or co-designed our professional identity unit to make sure that when the students have taken that and then they go on to placement, really feel that they're part of the fabric of the company.
Correct.
And we're looking at how we are supporting the student every step of the way. So to say we offer compulsory placements is one thing, but to offer then the support to make sure that the students actually get that.
Correct.
And let's be fair, not everybody is a skilled interviewee. And there's an opportunity for us to make sure that we upskill the students along the way if they are not successful in, securing a placement.
Correct.
And there's some agency also on the student, obviously, because, they need to apply what they're learning and they need to want what they want. And the employer understands, right? But I think that's an important part of learning. I think I go back to my thought around, we're not just educating graduates to become employees. I think universities need to take this seriously in creating individuals, confident individuals that change contribute meaningfully to changing industry and changing economy.
I love this thought of yours. That I have seen a lot of students not working in what they have studied. And that is where what you have just mentioned is something which should be the core of any university degree, that while the student finishes, other than what they have studied, they need to be professionally recognized. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think part of the problem is as well when then students, and every student or a lot of students work part-time, right? But it is not related to the discipline field. Now, when they then finish their course and they're then ready to become accountant or then ready to become engineer, but on their CV it says different kind of work and very part-time kind of specific work, employers just go, yeah, but how are you going to show us that you can apply what you have learned in a very busy work environment? So that's part of the thinking around it. But I think it go back as well to, I mean, the name of this podcast,
Spin
right?
the career wheel, yeah.
Spinning the career wheel. I think that's an important part because we're not just part of one career, right? I think we all choose an academic course at some point in our lives based on a subjective point in our lives that we feel passionate about. But life changes, industry changes.
Situations changes.
Exactly. I think all of that is an important part. At the end of the day, we are creating adults that are able to contribute to changing environments.
Yes. And I'll tell you, when we named this, we had a lot of brainstorming among our team and we finally came up with this name. Was primarily, I said, spin the career wheel. So when a student is in their class 9th and 10th, they work a lot with their parents. That's when they should keep on spinning it till they know which is the career they want to do. So while they're very sure this is what we want to do, but still, you don't know what happens 5 years down, and they should be ready to spin it again if they're not happy what they are doing. So nobody's stuck with anything. This is what we need to make sure that our students are confident while they are studying their university degrees.
And I think you and I were good examples. Neither of us are in our field of studies now working, right?
Correct.
But we contribute to a wider economy and industry. And I think it is an important part for us to recognize that that's exactly what we need to do with our students. And obviously my particular passion, international students, making sure they do well.
So my last question before we end this is, let's conclude. If you want to conclude, so all these Indian students, parents, when they are in their decision making of which university they should choose, so while there's a lot of buzz around the rankings, the research rankings, what is your take? Like, how should they take that decision? What weightage should they give to employability or research or sustainability or the rankings? Yeah, just your thought on that.
So I think, first of all, it's a huge decision. It's an important decision to make. I think the years we spend at university and young people spend at university are formative years and they shape you. Therefore, the importance of taking time and making the right decision. I think rankings are important. It really, they can show, they can highlight some really important things. I think research rankings can really emphasize some of the focus areas a university takes in terms of contributing wider to research. I do think, though, that the importance of looking at the learning environment and the learning outcomes are a big part of that. Should be a big part of the decision making. And students that are thinking about, what am I going to do when I finish? This is a big investment. I'm studying 3-4 years. What am I going to get out of it? Or when parents actually ask that question, when are you coming back? When
the
you're
return
finishing,
on investment, is a big
what are you
word.
bringing back?
Yeah.
The employment outcomes should be a big consideration in that sense.
Yes.
And not just the employment outcomes, but also the support that students receive in order to get to that employment outcome.
I agree. I am with that. And I think that was the reason we had this discussion. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Barbara, for coming here, taking time out. And I'm sure that it is a good discussion for a lot of our Indian parents and students to hear.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to us. And hopefully you would have some clarity around the internships or the work integrated learning terminologies which are used when you see the university websites. Thank you so much.